men often understand this. If you go to some sort of sports game and a man is hit in a tender area, men react as if they were hit in that tender area. And my understanding of Stein, am I saying, is it Stein or Stein? Forgive me.
So Stein English, Stein German,
but
trying
to be fancy.
Go between the two because I just don't ever remember which,
Well, you correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding was that she says, and also when we think of empathy, we often think of, I feel your pain kind of thing, but her understanding is broader than that, right? It's like, I feel your jubilation. It's not just pain. Yeah. But that she says something, or she seems to mean, I don't deduce from your facial expressions that you are in pain, remind myself what that was like last time I was also in that state, and then sympathize with that. Yeah. But I'm actually experiencing your pain, your jubilation. Yeah. And if I'm right in that, then that really does seem to, modern neuroscience really seems to confirm that rather bizarre insight.
The name mirror neuron comes from the fact that they fire both when you do something and when you watch someone doing something, even if you don't move a muscle. Basically, it's as if they mirror the neural activity of the person actually doing the thing. And they were first discovered in macaque monkeys in the early 90s. The story goes that one day, while a monkey had thin needle electrodes inserted into individual neurons in their brain, some of the graduate students, well, they went and took a lunch break. And while one of those graduate students was eating in front of the monkey, all of a sudden, there was neural activity in the premotor region of the frontal cortex in the monkey's brain. This region would normally fire if the monkey was moving, like reaching for food or eating. But those neurons were firing while the monkey was motionless and just watching someone else do those things. Many neuroscientists now think that they help us learn from other people through observation.
Here's the problem. If there is no God, what basis remains for objective good or bad, right or wrong? If God does not exist, objective moral values do not exist. And here's why. Without some objective reference point, we have no way of saying that something is really up or down. God's nature provides an objective reference point for moral values. It's the standard against which all actions and decisions are measured. But if there's no God, there's no objective reference point. All we're left with is one person's viewpoint, which is no more valid than anyone else's viewpoint. This kind of morality is subjective, not objective. Is something good just because God wills it, or does God will something because it is good? The answer is neither one. Rather, God wills something because He is good. God is the standard of moral values, just as a live musical performance is the standard for a high-fidelity recording.
Without your love.
The more a recording sounds like the original, the better it is. Likewise, the more closely a moral action conforms to God's nature, the better it is. But if atheism is true, there is no ultimate standard. So there can be no moral obligations or duties. Who or what lays such duties upon us? No one. Remember, for the atheist, humans are just accidents of nature, highly evolved animals. But animals have no moral obligations to one another. When a cat kills a mouse, it hasn't done anything morally wrong. The cat's just being a cat. If God doesn't exist, we should view human behavior in the same way. No action should be considered morally right or wrong. If God does not exist, objective moral values and duties do not exist. But objective moral values and duties do exist. Therefore, God exists. Atheism fails to provide a foundation for the moral reality every one of us experiences every day. In fact, the existence of objective morality points us directly to the existence of God.
I was born in Den Bosch, where the painter Hieronymus Bosch named himself after. And so I've always been very fond of this painter, who lived and worked in the 15th century. And what is interesting about him in relation to morality is he lived at a time where religion's influence was waning, and he was sort of wondering, I think, what would happen with society if there was no religion or if there was less religion? And so he painted this famous painting, The Garden of Earthly Delights, which some have interpreted as being humanity before the fall or being humanity without any fall at all. And so it makes you wonder what would happen if we hadn't tasted the fruit of knowledge, so to speak, and what kind of morality we would have. Deep down, we are competitors, we are aggressive, we are all out for our own profit, basically. So we have this image in political science, economics, the humanities, philosophy, for that matter, that man is a wolf to man. And so deep down, our nature is actually nasty. So these are the pillars of morality. If you ask anyone what is morality based on, these are the two factors that always come out. One is reciprocity, and associated with it is a sense of justice and a sense of fairness. And the other one is empathy and compassion. And human morality is more than this. But if you would remove these two pillars, there would be not much remaining, I think, and so they're absolutely essential. So let me give you a few examples here. This is a very old video from the Yerkes Primate Center where they train chimpanzees to cooperate. So this is already about 100 years ago that we were doing experiments on cooperation. And what you have here is two young chimpanzees who have a box, and the box is too heavy for one chimp to pull in. And of course, there's food on the box, otherwise they wouldn't be pulling so hard. And now you're going to get a more interesting picture, because now one of the two chimps has been fed. So one of the two is not really interested in the task anymore. He takes basically everything. So there are two interesting parts about this. One is that the chimp on the right has a full understanding he needs the partner, so full understanding of the need for cooperation. The second one is that the partner is willing to work even though he's not interested in the food. Why would that be? Well, that probably has to do with reciprocity. There's actually a lot of evidence in primates and other animals that they return favors, and so he will get a return favor at some point in the future. We do the same task with elephants. We have an apparatus around of which there's a rope, a single rope, and if you pull on this side of the rope disappears on the other side. So two elephants need to pick it up at exactly the same time and pull, otherwise nothing is going to happen, and the rope disappears. And so that's how they bring it in. But now we're going to make it more difficult, because the whole purpose of this experiment is to see how well they understand cooperation. Do they understand it as well as the chimps, for example? And so what we do in the next step is we release one elephant before the other, and that elephant needs to be smart enough to stay there and wait and not pull at the rope, because if he pulls at the rope, it disappears and the whole test is over. Now, this elephant does something illegal that we did not teach it, but it shows the understanding that he has, because he puts his big foot on the rope, stands on the rope, and waits there for the other, and then the other is going to do all the work for him. So it's what we call freeloading. But it shows the intelligence that the elephants had. They developed several of these alternative techniques that we did not approve of necessarily. So the other elephant is now coming, and is going to pull it in. Now look at the other doesn't forget to eat, of course. Empathy is my main topic at the moment of research, and empathy has sort of two qualities. One is the understanding part of it. This is just a regular definition, the ability to understand and share the feelings of another, and the emotional part. And so empathy has basically two channels. One is the body channel. If you talk with a sad person, you're going to adopt a sad expression and a sad posture, and before you know it, you feel sad. And that's sort of the body channel of emotional empathy, which many animals have. Your average dog has that also. That's actually why people keep mammals in the home and not turtles or snakes or something like that, who don't have that kind of empathy. And then there's a cognitive channel, which is more that you can take the perspective of somebody else. And that's more limited. There's few animals. I think elephants and apes can do that kind of thing, but there are very few animals who can do that. In humans, of course, we can study that with yawn contagion. Humans yawn when others yawn, and it's related to empathy. It activates the same areas in the brain. Also, we know that people who have a lot of yawn contagion are highly empathic. People who have problems with empathy, such as autistic children, they don't have yawn contagion. So it is connected. And we study that in our chimpanzees by presenting them with an animated head. So that's what you see on the upper left, an animated head that yawns. And there's a chimpanzee watching, an actual real chimpanzee watching a computer screen on which we play these animations. So yawn contagion, that you're probably all familiar with, and maybe you're going to start yawning soon now, is something that we share with other animals, and that's related to that whole body channel of synchronization that underlies empathy, and that is universal in the mammals, basically. Now, we also study more complex expressions. This is consolation. This is a male chimpanzee who has lost a fight, and he's screaming, and a juvenile comes over and puts an arm around him and calms him down. That's consolation. It's very similar to human consolation. And consolation behavior, it's empathy-driven. That's actually the way they study empathy in human children, is to instruct a family member to act distressed, and then they see what young children do. And so it is related to empathy, and that's the kind of expressions we look at. We also recently published an experiment, you may have heard about it, on altruism in chimpanzees, where the question is, do chimpanzees care about the welfare of somebody else? And for decades, it had been assumed that only humans can do that. Only humans worry about the welfare of somebody else. In this case, we put two chimpanzees side by side, and one has a bucket full of tokens, and the tokens have different meanings. One kind of token feeds only the partner who chooses, the other one feeds both of them. So this is a study we did with Vicky Horner. And here you have the two color tokens. So they have a whole bucket full of them, and they have to pick one of the two colors. You will see how that goes. So if this chimp makes the selfish choice, which is the red token in this case, he needs to give it to us. We pick it up. We put it on the table where there's two food rewards, but in this case only the one on the right gets food and the one on the left walks away, because she knows already that this is not a good test for her. And then the next one is the pro-social token. So the one who makes the choices, that's the interesting part here. For the one who makes the choices, it doesn't really matter. So she gives us now a pro-social token and both chimps get fed. So the one who makes the choices always get a reward. So it doesn't matter whatsoever, and she should actually be choosing blindly. But what we find is that they prefer the prosocial token. So this is the 50% line, that's the random expectation. And especially if the partner draws attention to itself, they choose more. And if the partner puts pressure on them, so if the partner starts spitting water and intimidating them, then the choices go down and they actually don't want to. It's as if they're saying, if you're not behaving, I'm not going to be prosocial today. And this is what happens without a partner, when there's no partner sitting there. And so we found that the chimpanzees do care about the well-being of somebody else, especially these are other members of their own group. So a final experiment that I want to mention to you is our fairness study. There's a very simple task that they need to do. And if you give both of them cucumber for the task, the two monkeys side by side, they're perfectly willing to do this 25 times in a row. So cucumber, even though it's really only water in my opinion, but cucumber is perfectly fine for them. Now if you give the partner grapes, the food preferences of my capuchin monkeys correspond exactly with the prices in the supermarket. And so if you give them grapes, that's a far better food, then you create inequity between them. So that's the experiment we did. Recently, we videotaped it with new monkeys who had never done the task, thinking that maybe they would have a stronger reaction, and that turned out to be right. The one on the left is the monkey who gets cucumber. The one on the right is the one who gets grapes. The one who gets cucumber, note that the first piece of cucumber is perfectly fine. The first piece she eats. Then she sees the other one getting grape, and you will see what happens. So she gives a rock to us, that's the task, and we give her a piece of cucumber, and she eats it. The other one needs to give a rock to us, and that's what she does. And she gets a grape. And she eats it. The other one sees that. She gives a rock to us now, gets again cucumber. And another one wrote a whole chapter saying that he would believe it had something to do with fairness if the one who got grapes would refuse the grapes. Now, the funny thing is that Sarah Brosnan, who's been doing this with chimpanzees, had a couple of combinations of chimpanzees where indeed the one who would get the grape would refuse the grape until the other guy also got a grape. So we're getting very close to the human sense of fairness, and I think philosophers need to rethink their philosophy for a while. So let me summarize. I believe there's an evolved morality. I think morality is much more than what I've been talking about, but it would be impossible without these ingredients that we find in other primates, which are empathy and consolation, prosocial tendencies, and reciprocity and a sense of fairness. And so we work on these particular issues to see if we can create a morality from the bottom up, so to speak, without necessarily God and religion involved, and to see how we can get to an evolved morality.